Her, analysis showed that indeed one of the greatest shocks will be on groundwater stocks. In the, in Jordan, we already know that the stocks are over abstracted. I'm interested in responses to that. The USGS is undertaking a project right now to identify opportunities or areas where groundwater recharge may make sense. I was wondering whether your analysis and the discussions that ensued identified aquifer recharge as one of the solutions of potential mitigating measures that might be taken, and curious about that.
Yeah, we didn't actually go to the stage where we talked to policymakers and really identified the most suited measures. But it is true, I didn't show you any maps, but we can also map out the aquifers or the places where aquifer recharge is most heavily affected. So we can identify hotspots where we say this is really where you should be careful. And then the question is, do you try to target your policy on that result, or do you have to target your policies somewhere else? Because that's the whole thing about this systemic response, that perhaps you need to be, if you have more efficient irrigation in Syria, that you may save water so that it doesn't have to be extracted somewhere else. So it's really, it's also about, when you think about negotiations between those countries, it's really trying to have a large set of potential options that also make clear that it's not only the local actions required when you see local responses, it's also this international action. So I'm not sure that I would, based on this, I would advise to really have a policy targeted at that spot. But you would require, like I said, also technological intervention, wastewater treatment, all those things that can save water, so you don't have to extract that much. So that will be my answer, but not, like I said, not based on interactions with policymakers, so as a complete Dutch outsider.
Could I ask you, though, to clarify on that point, how were you identifying those hotspots? And you had mentioned the 5 layers. But could you give us a little bit more on the methodology applied for that? Because groundwater recharge is rather, or groundwater, recharge and the effects of climate change is rather sensitive.
So this is very, very schematic. What is up here, when you go down, is where the rain falls. So it falls on the first surface layers. And then part of it goes down into the root zone, and part of it goes down again to aquifers. But it not only goes down, there are also lateral flows that move the water spatially. And for the model, we calibrated to the extent possible, given the data, the hydrological flows. So we used, say, the insights from hydrology, so the laws that they use, and the methods to calculate runoff, to calculate evaporation, and say the transfer from root zone to aquifer zone, to see how recharge is actually happening. There is, I have to admit, there is a huge debate on modeling aquifers, specifically the lateral flows between the aquifers. So how much, if I take it out here, how much is actually coming in from the same aquifer, let alone how much is, because the Jordan River Basin has I think 7 or 9 aquifers. So how are they connected? And in the follow-up, we're planning to pay more attention to the modeling of the lateral flows of groundwater. Because that's something that we feel is under-researched. There's much research on surface water, but much less on the groundwater dynamics. And of course, there's a layer also, because you cannot really speak about groundwater. You have to speak about different layers of groundwater. And there is, of course, a layer that is not recharged at all, the Jurassic aquifers. And those are the ones that are now even, they are planning to even get the water from those very deep aquifers. And those very deep aquifers are not really included in the model because they are not recharged. They're completely isolated. So we're talking about groundwater that is connected, let's say, to the root zone. Tomorrow we'll try to give a more technical, but I didn't want to have the whole model and then say something about climate change. So
so there will be a follow-up a little bit more on this tomorrow, so that you get a little advertising for tomorrow.
Be there tomorrow, yes.
Okay. Sure, Indira, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Actually, I have a question which is related to. I want to know if this study is documented anywhere, or if you, or if is it part of national communication, or when you conducted this study. The reason why I am asking for this, I just want to highlight that IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, now conducting a report, especially for desertification and drought. And I would like to encourage you and to integrate these kind of studies in the report. Because we faced that as Arab region, we didn't have any studies regarding these issues. So maybe this would help to have a very good report eventually targeting or focusing for Arab region. Thank you.
So this work is now only documented in the report we have made for SIDA, the sponsor of the project. We are reworking this project report into several publications for these peer-reviewed journals. And the part of the work that refers to the downscaling is actually also already published, I think in 2014. I look at my colleagues, some 2013 or even 16 last year, but the work was done, I think, in 2014, 2015. So there was a downscaling part, and this model work was presented first September last year. And we are working with our co-authors, also from Just University, on refining and improving also all this part. So yeah, we'll be very happy to use the latest information. Definitely, yes.
Actually, I encouraging you to do this, and especially you may communicate this report to the IPCC Secretariat to integrate it to the report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your suggestion. Yeah.
I'm going to take one more question if there is a. S'il vous plaît, Mr. Ayadi. How's your French? I'll ask you to speak in French if you prefer.
لماذا لم تأخذوا
Yes? The microphone, otherwise I'm not. Well, microphone, the interpreter cannot do anything.
Sorry. شكرا. العرض الذي قدمتموه لم تأخذوا تونس بعين الاعتبار في مجال التغذية الاصطناعية، وهذا مع الذكر بكون تونس عندنا التجربة منذ القديم، منذ سنة 1990 معناتها نقوم بعملية الشحن الصناعي للطبقات المائية، ولكن ما عندناش التقييم التام لهذه التجربة، واحنا حاليا تو في طور إنجاز التقييم هذا. ولكن هناك العديد من الدراسات اللي أنجزت، هناك عديد من الليزارتيك اللي نسميهم هناك العديد من النشريات على مستوى البحث العلمي اللي وقعت في موضوع الشحن الصناعي بتونس، ولم تذكروا في مداخلتكم تونس.
Just to remark, Mr. Mohammed Ayadi is the director for groundwater recharge in Tunisia. So that's where that's coming from.
Okay, thank you. It's always good to know other research in related areas. The reason not including Tunisia is that we really focused on the Jordan River basin. And we built a consortium with representatives, so a scientific representative of all the riparian states except Israel for obvious reasons. So that's why we did not include Tunisia. With respect to the usability of studies from other areas, with groundwater it's very much also related to the specific geology of a region. So we have to see, because I'm not familiar with Tunisia, we will have to see to what extent we can use results from Tunisia to improve our modeling of groundwater dynamics in this particular region. But I thank you for the helpful suggestion that you have been working on Tunisia for a long time, and we definitely will have a look at it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. One more? Okay, one more, because I was thinking we'd leave earlier because it's such a late day, but we're going to go to the end of the session, it seems. Go ahead.
Yes, I wonder if you have any justification why only for Syria the rainfall is going to increase.
Yeah, that has to do, I think we have to look closer into that. It has to do with our method of extrapolation from the Yarmouk. Like I said, we had only for the Yarmouk, we really had the downscaled results. And we used the patterns, the historical patterns from 1980 to 2000 to relate rainfall in Syria to rainfall and other parts to rainfall in the Yarmouk. So that's why we got this idea of, okay, it seems to be that there is a gradient going from south to north, which would also then which we used to extrapolate the predictions for rainfall from the Yarmouk to all the other parts of the Jordan River basin, including Syria. So it's part of our method of extrapolation. So it's also that we don't have really other sources to use yet because there is only this global circulation. Yeah, from the literature there are also indications, so we have to other indications, but it's not so specific that is another estimate. So we have to, for the follow-up, and once we really start to make it into a paper, we have to check if we really are that confident that it will increase the rainfall in Syria, or that we have to have some also perhaps some more scenarios where we more reflect also the uncertainty of the global circulation models. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Passing from the basin level, we'll go down to the larger region. I'm very pleased to have with us Dr. Hammou Laamrani. Hammou is the current advisor for GIZ for the Aquam project, which is the adaptation to climate change in the MENA region, supported by the German government. And in that capacity, he's also an advisor to the Arab Ministerial Water Council at the League of Arab States. He holds his PhD from Copenhagen University and has worked with the Canadian SIDA before, and now is helping us actually on a regional initiative for the assessment of climate change on water resources and socioeconomic vulnerability in the Arab region called RICAR, and he is our focal point at GIZ and at the League of Arab States, along with colleagues supporting that work. So I'm looking forward. We are happy to have your presentation, which will focus on climate change adaptation on the water sector in the MENA region. You double click on your name and you should get there.
Yes.
Technical difficulties? Yes.
Presentation mode first.
You have to go to presentation.
Can I?
Sorry.
One second.
Just give that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
مساء الخير. Thank you, Carol, for the introduction. Actually, this exercise fits nicely with the previous presentation, in a sense that this is a presentation of what we can do when we know that there will be implications of climate change on water and land and people in this region. What we did as an exercise in the frame of the Aquam program is looking through what we know and what we can already do in terms of actions, how to do it, and then what are the general messages we can take home after the discussion. So at the regional level, the RICAR initiative that Carol has mentioned has been working for quite a long time on modeling and assessing the impact of climate change on water resources in the region. And as a follow-up was the assessment of the vulnerability to climate change at the regional level, with the identification of hotspots where some priority action should be directed. So I'm referring to the knowledge repository available at the UNESCO website, that has a wealth of information on what kind of impact will be happening in the region. We further went into the question, how is this going to be affecting the agricultural sector, and what kind of adaptive measures we can envision and recommend to the policymakers in the region, based on pilot studies in Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. We looked through the implications on agricultural sector, and with a focus on a few crops, and of course looking into what will happen as a result of the increase of temperature, evapotranspiration, and the reduction of precipitation. So we already know that there will be reduction in yields for the crops the study was focusing on. And this reduction is variable according to the crops and according to the pilot country. We also know that the number of failure years is going to be increasing over time with the magnitude of climate change. And of course, based on the vulnerability assessment study, we already know something about the hotspots where actions are needed. So the question is, what shall we do? So we went through the project portfolio of GIZ in this region, and GIZ has been investing in the water sector for quite some time in different countries with different contexts and with different issues in the water sector. And we tried to synthesize actions that had been successful and that can be replicated. And of course, we tried to understand the conditions under which those success stories can be replicated and scaled up in the region. So we came up with a compilation of 15 best practices that have been proven to be working under different physical, institutional conditions. And those are selected also for different water-related topics, starting from water-saving technologies, introduction of new crops, forestry management, up to awareness using the traditional tools, but also involving the religious leaders into awareness. So that's compilation of the 15 best practices from different perspectives shows that there are already things that we are doing that are part of the adaptation options the region has. So the compilation is in 2 languages. It's in Arabic and in English. And as I mentioned, it covers a range of topics, starting from development of organic agriculture in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to enhancing the adaptation to climate change in industrial areas in Morocco, to urban agriculture in Greater Cairo. And the focus here is about water saving and water valuation practices. And it also covers an institutional component that is the establishment of the National Competence Center for Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation in Morocco. The idea is to show that there are already actions decision makers can start making in the context of the region with the level of information and certainty we do have based on the climate models and the examples we have in the previous presentation shows that there is already room for action. So we also had opened the room for exchange between the leaders of those practices across the region and made them available to whoever is interested in scaling up or taking up any of the best practices further in terms of replication and scaling up. So we put in the best practices reports, contacts of the lead experts to get more information and details on the different facets of the adaptation practices in the water sector. Yeah, the way they are written also is focusing on what can be learned from the projects or the experience, and under which conditions this could be replicated in other countries in the Arab region, both from the institutional and from the technical aspects. So they are accessible at the web link of the projects. And after the presentation of this compilation of best